Good Monday morning, y'all. How y'all doing? Good morning, YouTube, should I say. How is everybody doing today? So I wanted this morning to come to you guys to talk about a couple of hot button issues that is going on in this country right now. There's a large discussion about the removal of the Confederate flag from NASCAR, to be in particular. A lot of those NASCAR fans, as well as a lot of Anglo people, are up in arms about the removal of the not only the Confederate flag, but also the removal of a lot of these Confederate, soldier memorials, and all of this, right? And I also want to talk about what it means to defund the police department. And I want to talk about that because somebody asked me the other day on the video, what I thought about defunding uh, the police departments across the country. And actually, so whoever used the term defunding the police department, that I think that that term was used. I don't even know if the press started it, but it's a very inflammatory term. I think a lot of people are, not in favor of this simply because they don't. Come on, Murray Baylor. Simply because they don't understand what they mean, but what the term means by defunding the police department, what it entails. And like I said, I think that they used the wrong word. Do you see what I'm saying? I think that they need to, but they used the word, they needed to, explain what it meant. And what it means is to not disfund the police department or disband the police department, get rid of, the police department, in every state, city and county and state. What it means is they want to redistribute funds or redirect funds from the police department, because a lot of people don't realize that funding in any county or city or state across the United States of America, when you're dealing with government on a local level and you start to delve into the budget, you will realize that the funding of the police department is about 1/3 of any county or state's budget. And what they want to do is not defund the police department, they want to redistribute some of the monies that are given to the police department, because the police department don't only get your local tax dollars, it also gets a large amount of funding from the government. And they want to redistribute some of that money and use it for police reform, or re-education, retraining of the police department. They also want to take away some of that funding and put it into social issues. Like, say you live in a low income community and there is not any parks for your kids to play in, or any after school programs and what nature. They want to move funding towards that. They also want to use some of that funding towards education, towards your public school systems. They also, good morning, Kingsmina. Everyone in the chat. Oh, thank you. And they also want to use some of that money for mental health. There are, because of the Reagan era, Ronald Reagan pretty much laid waste to mental health facilities across the country. Do you see what I'm saying? He pretty much, took away all those monies away from, uh, buildings. There are no more mental asylums in a lot of states. They send a lot of these mentally ill people to jail because there's nowhere else to house them. They're not criminals. They haven't committed a crime. It's just that they are mentally ill, and not only more of a danger to themselves than to the public many times. So what they want to do is not defund the police department. They want to redistribute the massive amount of dollars that are given to these police departments across the country every year. State money and federal money, they want to redistribute that money. So, but you have a lot of people not in favor of that simply because they don't understand that they're not trying to eliminate the police department. Like I said, they're trying to redistribute the monies. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people are saying stuff like, well, if you defund the police department or you dissolve the police department, what if I call, who am I going to call if somebody breaks into my home or, you know, somebody's committed a crime against me? If we don't have a police department in our city or state, who are we going to call for protection? Do you see what I'm saying? And we know that that you're dealing with a hot button issue, especially as it pertains to the Anglo, because we know that the inception of what is now the police department was formed back in the patty roller days to catch runaway slaves, and because a lot of white people were concerned that you would have these slave revolts and black people were going to come into your home and kill you and your whole family, blah blah this and blah blah that. That is how the police departments across the country were formed in order to protect white people, basically. And so now they're in fear of losing that protection. So, and instead of using a word like redistributing the funds to the police department, they will, they're going around hollering, well, they're trying to disband and dismantle and defund the police department. But you're doing it is in an effort to fearmonger people. That is all that's going on. And so, like I said the other day, it was a whole other video. So that's why I'm doing this video this morning. So they are using an inflammatory word um in an effort to, stir people's emotions and create more seeds of division between black and white Americans. Do you see what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, no, you have a whole lot of other ethnicities of people. We know this in the United States of America, but at the end of the day, it's all about black people and white people. It's about white supremacy. It's about oppression of black people. It's about inequality. They fear you being having equal footing, to whites. They fear that you will, excel them, you will do better than them, and that really circles me back around to the fact of a lot of people being in uproar, a lot of NASCAR fans, for instance, saying that you're removing our heritage. When you go to removing these Confederate flags and these Confederate statues, you see what I'm saying? But they're saying, it's not about hate, it's about heritage. Well, I disagree, because your heritage is hate. When you see a flag like a Confederate flag, it symbolizes hate. It symbolizes white supremacy. Because the Civil War was fought not only to free the slaves, but they wanted to redistribute wealth from the South to the North. Do you see what I'm saying? But because a lot of people don't know history, white and black, a lot of people just fall for the okey doke and make this a race issue, when really is far more at stake than merely a race issue. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you don't know that it is something else is going on beside a race issue, do you see what I'm saying? Which is the plan. When anytime you have some kind of in this country, we go through eras, right? We went through the plantation, the slave plant, the antebellum slavery, chattel slavery. Do you see what I'm saying? That was the South once garnered more wealth than any other region in this United States of America. So to get rid of the South being in control or dominating wealth, they wanted to redistribute the wealth, because at one point in time we went to a what do they call it, the I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. After they Lincoln not only wanted to see I'm sorry, free the slaves, because he thought it was right, because he didn't think it was anything wrong with it. Basically, he wanted to redistribute the wealth coming from the South, as well as the labor coming from the South. See, it's always about the money in the end. And you see what I'm saying? So, plantation slavery, chattel slavery, whatever you call it, wealth was garnered at first in these United States of America via agriculture, cotton, the cotton and, every else, part of tobacco, sugar cane, all of that caused the South and people that owned slaves, which was tantamount to free labor. Do you see what I'm saying? And they didn't have to pay you for your hard work. You work from sun up to sundown, making money for the South. So that time was over. So we went to an age to where they wanted to build up these steel mills. I can't think of the name, the steel mills and stuff like that in the north. So they had to not only redistribute the wealth, but they also had to redistribute the labor. Do you see what I'm saying? So Lincoln came in, he's known as the great emancipator. Well, a lot of people don't talk about the fact that the industrial era. They went from the plantation era, I'm sorry, to the industrial era. Okay, so our ancestors weren't necessarily freed because Abraham Lincoln and people in the North felt that slavery was wrong. They were freed because they needed to free up the money. They wanted to distribute the wealth. They didn't want wealth to only be garnered by agriculture anymore because it was the coming of the industrial age or the steel age. They needed to redistribute the labor as well as the money. Okay, and when the Civil War broke out, that is why the South was up in arms. The South succeeded from the 13 states succeeded from the United States of America. So when you hear these people talking about it is about these flags and these monuments are about heritage and not hate, it is wrong because when the 13 states seceded from the United States, it wanted to maintain white supremacy. It wanted to maintain its way of life, and its way of life was pretty much owning slaves. Keeping the foot on the neck of black people so that they can continue to garner wealth off the backs of our ancestors. Okay, so we had 13 states secede from the United States, which really means technically when you're praising these Confederate soldiers and these Confederate symbols of white supremacy, like the Confederate flag, what you're doing is you're praising deserters. In today's army, the army doesn't like deserters. They don't like when you go AWOL from the army, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Cloud. That's a bad thing. But what these 13 states did was, you succeeded from the United States of America. You deserted America. You see what I'm saying? Because you waged war with your countrymen, because you wanted to, remain in control of the majority of the wealth, and you also want to remain in control of a whole race of people, so that they could do your bidding, so that they could garner wealth for you. And so now you got people, white people, because they are ignorant of the history or either don't care. We know that they benefited even to this day from chattel slavery. Do you see what I'm saying? And so now they're saying, well, I'm never going to go to a NASCAR event anymore because Bubba Wallace, got Black Lives Matter on his car, and he wants to get rid of the Confederate flags being used at NASCAR events. Okay. Uh, they feel that their heritage is being stripped away, but your heritage is hate filled. That is your heritage. It is the heritage of brutality and hate. Okay, you oppressed. You pretty much kidnapped and used for you trafficked a whole race of people. That is your heritage. Your heritage is hate. And so when you see them shouting out against the removal of these Confederate statues, do you see what I'm saying? You are really shouting out about whether you're for or against it. Like a lot of black people, want the statues removed because they say it reminds them, of a time in which our people were slaves, a very hate-filled time, a very traumatic time in our past. I do not agree that most of these statues should be removed. Now, there's a statue in Boston, Massachusetts, of Abraham Lincoln with a slave kneeling at his foot. I'm particularly offended by that statue. I didn't even know that statue existed until a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh yeah, we can get rid of that one right there. You see what I'm saying? And so, but for the most part, people don't even understand the history of these Confederate statues, white people, nor a lot of black people, because I feel like if you understood the history, you would understand why it is so important to keep these statues in place. As a reminder, you don't want to whitewash history. There was a group of white women during the 1900s that wanted to revise history. There was a whole revisionist movement. Soldiers, Confederate soldiers, the veterans, they were dying off. They wanted to be. You're right, Cloud. Lincoln owned slaves too. He didn't abolish slavery because he thought it was wrong. It was more economic. They had to redistribute the wealth. Like when you're saying defunding the police department, they want to redistribute funding. They don't want to, get rid of. They don't want to abolish the police department. Do you see what I'm saying? But anyway, those Confederate soldiers and senators committed treason. Yeah, treason, right? By right, they should have been punished by death, especially in that time. I agree, Claude. I agree, Claude. But that is the history that they say that they are trying to preserve. You were trying to preserve a history of hate. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, for the slow ones in the back, I am she. I don't know what else you said before that. I am she. But anyway, I'm not gonna get sidetracked. I'm trying to talk as fast as I can so that I can get this out before I get sidetracked by the chat, y'all. But I really want to explain what was going on. So let's talk about the statues for a minute, okay? Directly after the Civil War, this is why you have to do your own research and study before you speak out on a topic. Do you see what I'm saying? And people act like they didn't go to school. And if you went to school, honey, did you listen to history class? That's what I often wonder. But anyway, uh, so after the slaves were quote unquote freed, okay, there was something between the slaves being freed and the slaves being really herded toward the north. There was a time in which a lot of black people decided not to go north, and even if they went north, they started to form their own communities and do very well. So between that time, but after that, there was it is some people call it the Reconstruction era, but there's a little time before the onslaught of the Reconstruction era where a lot of black people were doing well also. Before the Reconstruction era only lasted for a decade. It only lasted for 10 years, but it was longer than 10 years after the slaves were freed and they started to, pretty much get their footing. They didn't want any handouts from anybody. They didn't want to work for the master anymore. They didn't want to work in these steel mills up north, so they started their own communities. Okay, they started to garner their own income. You see what I'm saying? They started with agriculture. They started building houses. Whatever it is that they had to do. We seen the video from Netflix not too long ago about what was her name, the hair lady. They were doing all kind of things like that, and yes, their communities were thriving. What they were doing was starting to compete. Do you see what I'm saying? They were starting to compete. They started to have equal footing when it came to communities and the redistribution and the circulating, the dollars circulating in their own communities. When your dollars can circulate in your own communities, that is how you garner wealth, okay, in your community. Because the money is staying in your community. You are starting to build up generational wealth. Okay? So in the Reconstruction era and just after slavery, as well as during the Reconstruction era, which was only 10 years, those two parts, but they all lump it into the 10-year Reconstruction era, but that is not exactly true. There was a time, like I said, after slavery, just to reiterate, and before and during the Reconstruction era, where freed slaves were first generation free slaves, but were born slaves. They were starting to compete and gain footing in the United States of America. A lot of them had their own representatives. Of course, they had their own communities. They had their own companies. They were starting to compete. They were starting to not only survive but thrive. Okay. And because they started to do that, people took notice. Now, it took them a little quick minute to take notice, but after they started, looking at the fact that, hey, these black people are doing better than we are in our own communities, they started to feel well about it. You see what I'm saying? So they started to, good morning, Baba, how you doing? Let me read this, y'all. Cloud said, Lincoln also freed the slaves because the North needed soldiers. The Confederate States had more soldiers than the Union States before that. You're right about that, Cloud. I really want to focus on the specifics of the Civil War as far as the the combat goes. But you're absolutely right about that. You see what I'm saying? A lot of people don't know. Talking about that, see, I'm not gonna read nothing else. I'm not gonna read nothing else. I'm not gonna read nothing else. A lot of people don't realize that I live in the state of Tennessee, right? You guys know that. But did you know that it was not until after the war started, until Lincoln was, was president, had been made president of the United States of America. It was not until after that that my state, the state of Tennessee, the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan, it was not until Lincoln became president then did the state of Tennessee go towards the Confederate States. Do you see what I'm saying? But up until then, the state of Tennessee was still with the United States of America. But after that, after Lincoln, like I said, was brought into office, then Tennessee, took its star over the Confederate side. Do you see what I'm saying? As well as the soldiers, like Cloud said. And good morning again, Baba. So anyway, like I said, during the Reconstruction era and just before, blacks were able to compete. Right, our communities were thriving. We built schools, just every other thing, that the white communities had. Some of the white communities had. We had started building up our communities. We had our own governments, and our own elected officials, our own towns, all of that. But we were surviving, we were thriving, and like I said, the white people, some of them started to get, really all of them, but they started to, be in fear that we were going to be able to compete on equal footing. A lot of them were intimidated. They were shocked that the slave, the cattle was doing so well. It was actually surviving and it was actually thriving, and that caused in the Reconstruction era, like I said, it lasted 10 years. After that came the Jim Crow era, because they were in fear of black people being able to compete on equal footing in the United States of America. Okay, they started enacting these Jim Crow laws, not only in the South but all over the country. Now, during this time, after the Civil War, after the slaves were freed, and also during the Reconstruction era, what a lot of people don't know is none of these. You didn't see any of these Confederate statues and stuff honoring these Confederate soldiers. So after they realized that, hey, we got to do something, we got to slow these black people down. They're surviving, they're thriving. They felt intimidated. Okay, now we know when white fragility starts to come in, they start destroying stuff. So you had stuff going on like the destruction of Black Wall Street, whatever everybody talk about. But it was many places, many black communities, more than Black Wall Street, more than what is another one? Rosewood. A lot of communities were destroyed. A lot of peoples were burned out of whole communities, and the land was stolen away from them and redistributed or given to white people. Okay, this is them, asserting their what they call their supremacy because they felt intimidated because you were competing with them. Do you see what I'm saying? And so you didn't even see these Confederate statues and people praising the flag because for a long time, down south they were embarrassed because they lost the war, they lost their way of life. It was something to hold your head in shame because you succeeded. You pretty much, what do you call it? Went AWOL, in your own country. Do you see what I'm saying? I can't think of the terminology. Cloud gonna have to cloud called it something. You deserted your own country, right? And that is you turned coat on your own country. So that was nothing to be proud about. That was not a proud heritage initially. So, like I said, after they saw black people, the slaves, competing, they felt that they needed to assert their supremacy. So, a couple of things that they did. There were no, not maybe a couple in the South, but there weren't a massive amount. There are over 700 plus, Confederate monuments in the United States of America. Well, after the Civil War, like I said, and during the Reconstruction era, you didn't have many, if any, of these monuments erected. But after Reconstruction, like I said, once again, just to reiterate, they knew that black people were going to compete. They felt a way about it, so they want to assert their supremacy. They didn't want you to compete then. They don't want you to compete now. So what did they do? You had a group of people called the revisionists. Who are the revisionists? The revisionists were a group of the Confederate veterans. Now, also during this time, a lot of the veterans of the Civil War, they started to die out, right? But and you also, but the leader of the pack, were a group of white women called the Daughters of the Confederacy, and the Daughters of Confederacy, coupled with these Civil War veterans, set out to revive history. Do you see what I'm saying? They wanted to reimagine, if you will, or whitewash what really went on during the Civil War. See, a lot of them want to make it seem like it was just some brave thing. That is why the Civil War was fought for. The pride of the not only the South, but the United States of America. We want to keep America great. In the words of what's the orange faced man, right? And people forget that Central Park in New York City is an upscale community yes, it was an upscale community for the black people. That's why I said it's not only, it's a very insidious. Let me get to this part, Cloud. You're absolutely right. You're jumping the gun on me, okay? I ain't gonna read nothing else, y'all. Okay, I'm trying to do this best I can. I'm trying to give you the speedy, the ebonic field version of, why people feel, a lot of white people feel that they are, when you're destroying the flag and these Confederate statues, that you are destroying their history. It's not. They say it's not about history. It's about hate, but it's actually about hate. Okay, and white supremacy. White supremacy is hate. Okay, so anyway, where was I? The revisionist era. Okay, during the time they started to feel away, like I said, because black people were competing. Y'all quit stopping me, okay? And hit the like button too. I'd appreciate it. Thank you guys. Just to get the video in the algorithm. So you had at the end of the Reconstruction era, ushered in the age of no problem, Kyle. You ain't doing nothing wrong. Ushered in the age of Jim Crow. A lot of these Jim Crow laws were established to pretty much hold black people back, basically in plain English, because they started to compete with white people. They were doing just as good and and oftentimes better than white people. So what did white people do? They got in their feelings. They wanted to assert their white supremacy. So they started enacting these Jim Crow laws, not only in the South, but all over the country, up north as well. Because you have to remember the North didn't really care nothing about you being a slave. It needed your labor, and it wanted to redistribute wealth in this country via the industrial age. Do you see what I'm saying? We are undergoing another redistribution of wealth in this country right now. Okay, we are leaving the industrial age and whatever age it was after that. We're leading into the technological age. Do you see what I'm saying? You have a lot of ages between the industrial age, which is pretty much we're at the end of it now, and the technological age. But the next great redistribution of wealth, if you will, is going towards the technology age. That's why you see, these elites up to their old tricks. The best thing, the number one trick in a trick bag is to pit black people against white people. Okay, because it sidetracks you from seeing what's going on. So anyway, the revisionists sprung up, and the revisionist form, like I said, it was the Daughters of Confederacy, a lot of Confederate veterans, a lot of other people, from the North also. So they went about to rewrite history, basically, or whitewash what was really going on during the time of the Civil War. They wanted to also reunite white people, right? I'm not going to read that. Reunite white people because they felt like it was time for the white people, to join together, because the slave is excelling, the black is excelling. They started to compete in this country. And this is our country, says the white man, even though it's the Indians' country. So what do? You rewrite history. So what they did was these Daughters of Confederacy, more than the Civil War people, there were no statues, and like I said, remember, not very many during the Reconstruction era, as well as after slavery. You saw a lot of these statues spring up during the between the 1900s and the 1920s. There were out these statues erected and turning these criminals, these defectors, into heroes and stuff. So you saw these memorials being built and placed in strategic places, mostly in the South, but also a couple in the North. They were placed in strategic places. You saw the resurgence of not only the KKK during that time, but also the resurgence of the Confederate flag, and they used the Confederate flag as a unifier, as a simple symbol of their white supremacist ideology, as well as they started praising the South. You praising slavery. Do you see what I'm saying? You're praising what you call was when America was great, if you will. Do you see what I'm saying? They started using that flag as a symbol of hate. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you're saying it's about heritage, it's not about hate. When these Anglos are going around saying that, I disagree. I disagree and I agree. Your heritage is the heritage of hate. That is your heritage. Okay, those statues, that flag, all of that stuff, that is a heritage of hate. And you're fighting to preserve, once again, your heritage of hate. Do you see what I'm saying? That is, for that reason, I don't agree with the statues being taken down. They need to be reminded of that heritage of hate. That is your heritage, okay? And so anyway, you saw between the 1900s and the 1920s, a lot of these statues being on, they started to revive history. Even in school, the Daughters of the Confederacy, them pink women that a lot of these black men love, those women were the main drivers of the revisionists. Okay, they even started out, coming for the minds of not only black children but white children as well. They wanted you to forget how disgusting the Civil War was and how they even turned on their own people. They even turned, like the Civil War soldiers during the time of the Civil War. They would confiscate, other white people's land. They would a lot of fathers were gone off to fight in the Civil War. I'm talking about these white people, right? They would come in and rape the women and sometimes murder them and steal their food, leaving the children to starve. The women were already left to fend for themselves. You ain't got no more slaves on the land. You ain't got no more men on the land. What you got to do? You have to fend for yourself, right? There were a lot of single mothers during the Civil War. Okay, having to learn how to fend for themselves. So a lot of these soldiers would come in and pretty much take over your land, take out your food, kill you, and a whole lot of stuff they were doing. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, and so they want to hide that history. They wanted the South to be in the Civil War to be romanticized, to be some romantic time of the past when America was truly great because white supremacy reigned supreme. Do you see what I'm saying? So really, they're tricking the white man because they want him. They need him as a race soldier, okay, to do the everyday, average on the street lynchings and hangings. Stay in your place, Negro, and all this and all of this. You're nothing, compared to white supremacy, nigga, and all of that work, right? They need the foot soldiers. So they had to dumb down the white people as to, how disgusting they treated one another. Okay, how savagely they treated one another. Okay, so the revisionists, especially those white women, those Daughters of the Confederacy, started out to rewrite history. And that's what they did. So you got the monuments erected, you got, the Confederate flag, a whole new meaning for the Confederate flag. You got the school books being written in a way that praised the Civil War and praised these Confederate soldiers. All of this is simply because during the Reconstruction era, they didn't realize that our ancestors were going to be able to compete, going to be able to survive and thrive. Do you see what I'm saying? Especially, in places, up north and down south. But if you didn't want to do work in the mills and stuff, that's gonna leave you to die. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm getting choked. So anyway, moving forward, Like I said, they enacted the Jim Crow laws. They started with all these statues. The Klan became really popular because they're shouting white power and all of this and all of that. They put on their little robes. They terrorize black people. Like it's real basic. Do you see what I'm saying? In the grand scheme of things, you know. And when I say it's real basic, I mean what the elites did to their own people is real basic for the fact that they fell for it. Do you see what I'm saying? And so that all of this was going on during the Jim Crow era, right? So eventually they started doing all this lynchings, hangings, burning of people's communities, taking their land, stealing their wealth, murdering them, whatever you got to do. There was white supremacy was riding hard. It was reigning supreme. Okay, so eventually they didn't feel afraid anymore. Okay, also around about after just after the abolishment of slavery and during the Reconstruction era. Also, especially up north, the patty rollers had to move up north to find other work. And this is a very brief history of that. But there's more. That needs to be a whole video about. I think I did do a video on the history of patty. But anyway, that is how the Fraternal Order of Police and these police departments start forming around the country because what they did was they continued to put fear in the heart of the white man, and the patty rollers needed the white people to remain in fear of black people so that they would have work to do. Because we know that a lot of these patty rollers, a lot of these overseers, if you will, on plantations, were nothing more than criminals that were shipped to the United States to do servitude because they had been kicked out of their, they was, there were such criminals that they didn't want them in their countries, like Ireland and the Europeans and all. They didn't want them over there, so they shipped them over here to this barren land, thinking probably they didn't care what was going to happen to them, but they did use a servitude, and then they were freed. You see what I'm saying? They were also overseers on the land, slave catchers, all this and all that. When the slave revolts, there are a lot of slave revolts that are not talked about because this is not our history. The slave revolts would arise. The first thing they're gonna do, the first line of defense of the white man was the patty rollers. Do you see what I'm saying? And if some slave revolts got so large that they had to call in the National Guard, all of this and all that. But the patty roller was set up to protect white people. So, like I said, after the Civil War was fought, slaves, our ancestors were no longer slaves. They started migrating to the north, building their own communities. So, what are these patty rollers going to do? What are these ex patty rollers going to do now? How are we going to keep instilling fear in white people so that we would have a place in this country? We would have something to do because you got to remember at that time, before let me see how to put this. Before white people were just white in this country, because today in this country, if you are, we see, you'll see white people and black people. Like I said, it always goes down to the white and black in this country. But before there was this system put in place of the white people having to shed off their ethnicity, you would have the Italians, first generation, after you got off the boat, after slavery, white America, started to divide. They were divided. They were not all white under one banner, if I can put it that way. Italians were still Italians. Greeks were still Greeks. Jews were still Jews, and just whatever other ethnicity. Okay, they had to join together to form the system of white supremacy racism, and to form the system of white supremacy racism, the white man had to shed out the Italians. They had to shed out their ethnicity because they would look down on one another, like the Italians were looked down and oppressed, predominantly in New York. I've read about that. If you were considered, if you are Irish, they looked down on you because you came over here. Your ancestors were criminals, and all of this and all of that. The Scots, they were looked down upon. So, but what these white people, the Scots and the Irish, what they did, they, like I said, they were the patty rollers at first, the ex-con. They formed what is now the Fraternal Order of Police because they were formerly patty rollers. They had to, like I said, keep instilling fear. How did they continue to instill fear in these white people down south and up north? Well, what they would do sometimes, they would commit crimes. They would rape white women. They would rob, white men. Burn their homes in the South. All of this stuff to continue to fearmonger these white people, so these white people would keep thinking that the patty roller was there to protect them. That's the white man's army. The first line of defense is the police department, right? So did they instill all of this fear, and saying that black people was going around, doing all this and all that. They always think that the black man want his white woman, the black man want whatever he got, he wants to possess, him pretty much, when it is the other way around. So and that is how they kept their job basically. Not only did they form the police department in that way, they also formed the fire department in that way, and a couple of other governmental agencies in that way. It was instilled by fear. Okay, yeah, Irish did not like Italians. Italians didn't like the whoever's and the whatevers. You see all these subgroups, but they had to come together under the same banner, which is the banner of white supremacy, racism, white superiority. They had to come together. They shared out their ethnicities. Italians weren't Italians, Irish weren't Irish Scots weren't Scots, and whatever else. They are now all white. Do you see what I'm saying? And they formed the police department via fear mongering and a whole other political types of nonsense. Okay, as well as voter suppression. For a long time, we ain't gonna talk about the vote, but y'all know the history of that, right? Maybe do another video. So anyway, um, the white man knows that the police department is there for him. Do you see what I'm saying? And so, I lost my train of thought. So that is how the police department was formed. I want to mention that. Oh, because I wanted to mention that because, we had this discussion about what it means when people are saying defunding the police department. That is another fear mongering tactic that is being used. Nobody is talking about defunding or abolishing or getting rid of the police departments across the country. They simply want to redistribute the amount of monies that are given to these police departments, on a statewide, county-wise basis. It's a very large sum of money that could be redistributed into doing a whole lot of other things in your city, in your county, in your state, and funding, giving more money. How can you get more funding for the police department than you give to education, than you give to the public school system? Do you see what I'm saying? That's ridiculous. You give more money to the police department. You took that a lot of that money came from the dismantling of mental health institutions across this country. A lot of homeless people are mentally ill. That is why they're homeless and on the street. They don't have anywhere to go. But that is in part because Reagan stripped away all of that money. Do you see what I'm saying? To fight the quote unquote war on drugs, the DARE program, the super predator program, if you will. They stripped away a lot of, almost all of that money from mental health. You see, a lot of, every state at one point in time had a mental health facility. That is not so anymore. Your mental health facility now is the jail. And these people, like I said, are not even criminals. They're mentally ill. They don't have anywhere else to go. So they lock them up. And that's crazy. But yeah. Yeah, and that's also a contributing factor when it comes to mass incarceration. Okay, because for a lot of states, the more prisoners that you have, on the books, the more money you get from the federal government. So it's always about the redistributing of wealth, and like I said, wealth is being distributed to the era of technology. And that's why we're seeing a lot of this stuff going on. But they are still fear mongering. They're still using the battle between black people and white people, if you will. It's real basic in the grand scheme of things. Do you see what I'm saying? And so yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Tiara. But I just wanted to bring a little bit of that history up, especially as it pertains to defunding. It's not defunding. It's not abolishing the police department. It's redistributing the funds. Okay, they want the money. They don't care about these police officers killing your black butt. They want the money. Do you see what I'm saying? They want the money. At the end of the day, it's always about the money. Just like Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, it was about the money and labor, not necessarily about the people. And a lot of people don't realize that. And then a lot of white people don't even know their own history. So they're going around here out up in arms talking about something. You're destroying our heritage. And it's not heritage, it's hate. Well, I just explained to you guys what it really was. But unfortunately, like I said, because of the Daughters of Confederacy and all these revisionist groups, even their history was rewritten. Okay? Even their history was rewritten. And they're very ignorant. Because when you don't read, you sound stupid. All right, because if you don't know your true history, we know that, history, the world has shown us. If you don't know the true history of the thing, you are doomed to repeat it. And, well, here in this country, well, we're repeating it once again because we're moving into a technological era. That's why you see a lot of this stuff going on. A lot of this stuff is being they just picking at the issue of race. Because if you really want to get something going, if you really want to make change, the elites want to garner even more power and more wealth. What do? They start this racial issue. People need to stop falling for that. Do you see what I'm saying? That's the number one trick in a trick bag. Especially white people. They're doing just as much harm or more harm to white people, technically, and I'm talking about the elites, than they're doing to black people, because they have taken away your generational wealth. Your source of generational wealth, white people, has been dwindled down almost to nothing. Why do you think that you can't live like your parents lived? But you so busy focusing on black people, okay? You can't focus on the elites. They are doing you harm, not black people. We just trying to make it into trees. All right? And so, really, guys, I really just wanted to let you guys know what they meant by defunding and what it meant to remove these statues and these flags and all of this and all that. That's what I basically want to talk about, because I said it was a whole different video, and because people are really getting that word defunding wrong. They're taking it out of context. You see what I'm saying? Black people and white people. Oh, Lord, we're not going to have no police department. What are we going to do? When that is not the case. You're going to have a police department. Okay, without some type of order, there's always chaos. Do you see what I'm saying? Nobody wants absolute chaos. It'd be like the Wild Wild West in this country. Every man for himself. No buffer in between. Okay? And so, but as far as the reforming goes, the police department is so corrupted, with these white supremacists that, in order to reform or retrain these police departments across the country, in my opinion, like, you need to do a lot of firing and rehiring of a different type of police officer, a different type of person. You know, we take into account their mental status. A lot of police officers are soldiers. Came from fighting wars and combats. How many of those police officers now have PTSD? Mental health is always an issue in everything. you know and they these a lot of these police precincts across the country, they hire these crazy people, for lack of a better word. These, like, say you are a war veteran and you got PTSD and you're hypersensitive to a lot of stuff, and you're going to react violently. Well, that's favored in a lot of these police departments. You see what I'm saying? And so that is that's just wrong. It needs to change. But like I said, the white supremacists is so embedded, in the police departments across the country. That's why they're rebelling now. And they're just simply being used by the elites. So yeah, that's what's going on. Curry K said, Miss Olivia, how do you feel about some southern state flags being influenced by the Confederate flag, i.e. Alabama? Well, yeah, Georgia, Mississippi, Arkansas, yeah, and so on and so on. Should they be updated? No. Why? 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 So history can be whitewashed, and we already talked. You might have to go back and look at the beginning of the video. We talked about the Confederate states, and we know that each Confederate state. Well, most of us know that each Confederate state has its own type of flag. But the rebel flag that is being uplifted in worship now, that is the flag that most people, when the NASCAR fans are up in arms about. That flag is the symbol of white supremacy racism. That rebel flag. Okay? And so, but yeah, each of the Confederate states has its own flag. So, but remove them, why? Update them, why? I don't believe in whitewashing history. And also, what a lot of people don't realize, and I realize that a lot of people don't want to see that sort of thing. You don't give your tax dollars away to your cities and your states and your federal government, because some of those tax dollars are used to maintain these memorials to these Confederate soldiers. You don't want to do that. You see what I'm saying? But what you also don't want to do is when you start taking down these Confederate, monuments and all of this and all that. What you are really kind of doing is whittling away at your freedom of speech, as well as your freedom of expression. And and playing into what the daughters of the Confederacy was trying to do. Okay, because this is a true reminder, a true reflection. They meant these statues to rewrite or whitewash the disgusting Civil War, okay, and slavery, and how disgusting the Civil War really was. Okay, they want to romanticize these Civil War veterans. You know, that's what they want to do. But if your child is going down the street with your child, and you educate yourself, and you can tell your child what that symbolizes, why that man is on that horse, why that slave is kneeling at the feet of Abraham Lincoln. You can tell them the true history. And you don't, and I can understand that, like that statue I was telling y'all about that I had never seen before in Boston, of Abraham Lincoln and the slave kneeling at his feet. I don't think those statues should be destroyed. You can put it in a museum. Put these statues in museums. You like these Confederate soldiers so much, honey. There's so many Confederate grave sites down south. Put them in them graves, in the grave sites. Like we got what is that big large cemetery? And I don't want to use the wrong word for the soldiers, the fallen soldiers. What is the name of that cemetery, Cloud? Where the soldiers are buried, a lot of them anyway. The American soldiers, even right to this day. Have something like that for these, Civil War veterans. Don't try to destroy the history. Don't do that. You're doing what the Daughters of Confederacy want you to do. They want you to rewrite how disgusting they were. That's what they want you to do. They want you to reimagine history. They whitewash history because of white guilt and white embarrassment at every turn. The unmarked soldier. Yeah, is that the name of the memorial? The one in Washington? But anyway, that's what they want. But like I said, put them in museums. Put them in these Confederate cemeteries. You know, there are dozens and dozens of Civil War reenactments, especially down south. They have whole competitions about who can reenact the Civil War the best, and all of this and all of that. Arlington National Cemetery. That is the one I was talking about. Thank you, Curry. Cloud must not be here anymore. But yeah, put them, do something like that. But don't destroy it. Don't act like it never happened. That's whitewashing history. And like I said, it's also, the taking away. They've been chipping at it for a while, our freedom of expression and our freedom of speech. They've been chipping at that away at that forever. You know. Well, the Germans removed. Somebody said the Germans removed all statues of Nazi images, etc., from public places. Well, what they choose to do over there in Germany, really is on them. It don't have nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? And they were probably embarrassed of the way that they treated the Jews. Is that why they removed them? They don't want to offend the Jew? Because we know that Hitler, the drug addict, was a maniac. And what did it say about their humanity? I can understand why, but that's not even, what in the Holocaust. People always want to throw up the Holocaust when they're talking about black oppression. The really two don't even compare. You know, don't act like, yes, right. Don't act like it never happened. But the two really can't even compare. Okay, because the Jew was never stripped of his name. The Jew was never stripped of his culture. The Jew was never, kidnapped from his land. You know, the Jew never had his religion taken away from him. You know, they wanted to scrub the minds of black people and resolve them to nothing more than cattle. Cattle was uplifted over them. It really can't compare. You see what I'm saying? There is no comparison. Not to me. So what they choose to do over in Germany about those Nazi images, okay. They followed a whole drug addict. That Hitler was a crazy drug addict. And millions of them fought and died for a crazy drug addict. Okay, his mama was a Jew. So what I guess so maybe, he hated himself. You know. And so I'm just like, you can't hold a comparison. You can't compare one with the other. I don't agree with that. Because what was done to our people was so ooh, it's so utterly devastating and beyond inhumane and so just ugh. It's just it can't be compared. It can't be compared. The Holocaust, any even if you don't get me wrong, the taking of one life at the hands of a Hitler or at the hands of a white supremacist. Back then and even on up to today, one slave being kidnapped from his land. One child dying in a gas chamber. That is inhumanity. And it is wrong. But because I am black and because I am descended from African slavery, I have to be more sympathetic to our plight. Jews want the whole world. They will never let you forget about the Holocaust. And you're not supposed to. So why does our history have to be forgotten? Why do you have to take down these Confederate statues? Why do you not even mention that? You can't even mention the word slavery on the Statue of Liberty. You can't even mention that. You're trying to, diminish slavery into involuntary immigrant status. No, we were slaves. We weren't involuntary immigrant. We were brought over here to slave, to be used as cattle, to be treated as less than cattle, to be seen as not human at all. Even to this day, that's how we are seen. So I cannot totally sympathize, but no, not one life should have to die to a crazy chronic like Hitler or a whole system of white supremacy racism. Even those people now benefit from the system of white supremacy racism. If that was done to your people, how in the world can you benefit from something like that? What does it say about you? You see what I'm saying? Yes, the trauma is encoded in our DNA. That's how absolute it was. Who tells a human being that they are nothing more than 3/5 of a human being? And who was that? What was that? That guy running for president. What's his name? During the days of Thurman and the Dixiecrats, they said that the black man would never be, better than the white man. His place is to be in servitude, under the white man. That is to be his permanent place. Do you see what I'm saying? And so you get people and they throw in all of these misnomers and they try to sidestep you with what happened to the Jews in Germany. And sidestep you, with the Hitlers. And every time I hear about oh, I'm sorry, I'm using my train of thought. Every time I have to hear something about the Holocaust, I think about the first Holocaust, the Black Holocaust, inflicted on our people in the motherland, brought about by King Leopold. You know, he annihilated over 20 million Africans. So what about that? Images and symbols are very powerful and last longer than the written word. That is why they should. We're talking about the Confederate flag and well, I agree. They should stand, but you have to know the history. So if the Germans felt like they wanted to get rid of them symbols, okay, that's on them. I don't live in Germany. Sorry. You know, you're absolutely right. Those statues represent those peoples. I agree. We're not arguing. We're actually on the same page. You're saying that it was justified for those Nazis, for those Germans to get rid of those symbols. I'm not saying it wasn't justified. I'm saying it's not the thing to do in this country. It's absolutely not. No, because they want to whitewash the injustice. They want to whitewash. They want. I'm not saying all Germans were Nazis. I'm not saying that at all. We're talking about the flag removal. You got to make up your mind, baby. Just because you're losing the argument don't mean you get to switch lanes. Okay. All right. So anyway, uh, when it pertains to our history in the United States of America, we are the only nation of people that is divided from. We don't technically even have a motherland. Do you see what I'm saying? We are a nation within the nation. We don't have our own nation. We are very different. Very different. The Jews have Jerusalem. You know. But because of chattel slavery, we have many generations of black people that have never even seen the motherland, don't even can't even associate their ancestry with Africa. That's how exact the system of white supremacy, racism, and chattel slavery was. To the point to where now we are a nation within a nation. We don't have a point of reference when it comes to our nation, it being black in America. You know. So this is what I mean by white people. It's a good example right here. Not even knowing their own history. You don't even know your own history. You don't even know why, if you're a white supremacist, you look up to a Hitler. Hitler was a crazy chronic, a crazy freaking drug addict that hated himself. He hated his mama. He was mad at his mama, basically. You know, they don't even know their freaking own. Have you ever read Mein Kampf? I have. I did it in school. I had to do a report on it. So you go around praising stuff that you know nothing about. A lot of black people do it. A lot of white people do it. A lot of everybody does it. And then you want to get, thank you, I am. You want to get in these conversations. And when it comes to somebody like me, you sound like a fool. It don't make no sense. So, yeah, those statues were absolutely slave owners. That's why I say they should absolutely stay up there. Absolutely. Because that is a monument to the history of the United States of America. That history does not need to be washed away. It does not it should not ever be glossed over. It should be a constant reminder of how disgusting this country treated a whole race of people. Because our ancestors did not ask to come over here. We didn't jump on those slave ships willingly. We didn't do it willingly. We were forced. And then they want to take away, you know, the disgusting, debaucherous nature of the Anglo when it came to the chattel slaves. They want to water it down and turn it into servitude. Involuntary immigrants. No. No. We were kidnapped from our own land. They try to, don't you know that they try to wipe Clean any identifier. Any way that you identify with your culture, be it religion, your name, whatever. They wanted a clean slate. They want to retrain you like you was a farm animal. You see what I'm saying? They want to retrain you like you was. I don't have to put the statue in my home because guess what? I live in the South. 10 minutes away from me is a statue. Okay, you don't know what you're talking about. Why don't you go educate yourself? But I like when you clowns come to, and you probably ain't even white. You probably some kind of troll, some kind of black troll. That's you dumb as fuck, and now you feeling away. Then you want to come and sidetrack me, but I done said everything I got to say. Y'all go back and listen to the end of this video. But I like to entertain these trolls. Because you feel away because you too dumb to read a fucking book. That's not my problem. That ain't my problem because you basic. Educate yourself with something more than rap music. And then come back and have a conversation. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm just saying. I'm done. Yeah, I'm done with it now. They want to garner your attention because they feel away. You get no attention now, you gone. But anyway, guys, I just want to, and if you're coming in late, please go back and I get irritated by trolls, like I really do. But anyway, go back and listen to the beginning of the video if you wanted to know what the word defund meant, defunding the police, what that entailed. Do you see what I'm saying? And how I felt about those, how I feel about the removal of the flags and the statues. Do you see what I'm saying? Just go back and see that. You in the bushes, I am she. Oh, I'm done tripping now. You know, it's early in the morning. You know, I had one cup of coffee, and I'm trying to talk to my people about history because a lot of people don't realize what's really going on, and when you really don't realize what's going on, you're able to be hurted in any direction that they want you to go, simply because you don't know the history. Not only for Black people, Anglos too. Because what if that thing wasn't Anglo? You just got educated on the whole history that you didn't even realize that you had. These elites, they playing you for a fool too. They do a disservice to you too. But you're so basic and you're so ignorant. You got your only goal is to eliminate melanated people based on the color of their skin. You don't know what they're about individually. You don't like them simply because of the color of their skin. How basic is that? Really, in the grand scheme of things, how basic do you have to be to hate a whole race of people because of the color of their skin? Thank you, I am she. Thank you, Peach Cobbler. So, yes, I get irritated by ignorant trolls. It's real ignorant. Like, where's your, you don't even know nothing. You just fall for the okie doke. That's called being a sheep. And I hear so many adults that run some of these, they sound absolutely stupid and ignorant. Did you not go to school? Because see, back in the day, you really could learn something from the public education system. See, now they've dumbed down the public education system to where it's so basic to where I don't even know, like it's such on a such remedial level to where a child, it's just like, it's bad. But once in school, in a public school system, you can actually get a pretty decent education. So if you're my age, I say I'm going to give you 40 and up. You had a good education if you had a public education. You had access to that free education that was actually a pretty decent education. Nowadays, not so much. So what is your excuse for being so remedial? That's what I want to know. Did you just not pay attention in school? Did you just go to school to pick up girls and pick up boys and only focus on your outfit and your hair? Did you not make a mistake and actually learn something? See, we used to have something, a class in school called American History as well as civics class. You see what I'm saying? And when I went to school, I was surrounded by predominantly Black teachers. You see what I'm saying? You don't see that so much now. You got now the majority of teachers of these Anglo revisionists. That's what I'm gonna call them. Teaching your children, Really not teaching your children anything, making them feel less than. This very insidious what's going on in this country right now with the public school system. Very insidious what's going on, and not only to their people, but not only to our people, but to their people as well. You know. And so anyway, guys, it's been over an hour. I guess I get off of here. I hope I made some sense to you guys. I hope I uh was able to properly explain some things before I got sidetracked by a remedial troll. Okay, but I always touch. I don't mind taking the time of educating the troll, whomever it is, for a little while. I toy with them, but after a while I get done and I just block them. You know what I mean? So it just is what it is. I love you guys teaching them and sleeping with. Okay, you're absolutely right. I am she. So anyway, like I said, if you haven't seen the beginning of the video, please take a moment to go back and listen to the video. Beginning of the video, it's good information. Throughout the video, you guys hit the one if you like this historical information. I try to break it down to its lowest common denominator because I am a history buff. Do you see? I love history in general. Do you see what I'm saying? So yeah, I try to break it down. Like I said, a lot of people are using fear mongering. When they're using words like defunding or removal of this, that, and the other. You know, that's fear mongering. That's what it is. You're being hurted. You're being hurted. Your the way you think about a subject is being hurted into whatever box they want you to be hurted into when it comes to said certain subjects. Thank you, Peach Cobbler. Thank you, I am she. But anyway, that's why I wanted to do this video. All right. So I'm going to get off of here. Thank you guys so much for listening to me, for watching the video. Thank you, Fayed. Please hit the like button if you haven't on the way out the door. I really, really appreciate when you guys do that. Thank you. Thank you to all of you guys that have supported me in the way of a donation. Thank you for supporting me in the way of just watching the video or liking the video or even disliking the video. Subscribing to my channel. I just want to take a moment to say thank you guys so much for that. Your participation is always welcome. Even the trolls, the participation is welcome because they're still giving me a click and a view. Okay? Anything or just in the form of a click and a view. But anyway, I'm gonna get off of here. You guys have a nice day. I love you guys. Okay, and I haven't said this in a while, but don't forget to smile. Don't forget to smile at somebody, even in the current, climate of this country, which is absolutely horrible. You still can take a moment and be happy. Find something to smile about. You might change somebody's day. You might save their life. Okay, and never, ever, 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 ever forget to love your beautiful, beautiful self. I'm going to talk to you guys later. You guys have a wonderful day. Bye bye. Peace.